everybody. Welcome to Living La Vita Local Podcast, episode 15.
14.5.
14.5.
Then 15.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's fine. Yeah, we could do a 0.5. That's cool. Yeah. Wait, no. Are we doing 15 tonight as well? So we're doing...
Yeah, we just do it. This is episode 14.5/15.
That's not confusing. We were just talking about volume wars through Rich's walls. I assume your neighbour probably doesn't listen to this podcast.
Probably not.
So does it look like the kind of retro video gaming podcast listener?
What does that look like? Bearing in mind we're two bearded blokes sat in a spare room with two nerdy t-shirts on, sweltering away.
Mine's a Father's Day t-shirt.
That's nice.
Yeah,
it's classy, that.
Sally said that she ultimately admitted it's from eBay, and it feels like it probably isn't long for the world. Like, the print doesn't feel like it's going to stay on there much long. Especially if you're not rubbing it.
I was going to say, if you're caressing it like that, it's probably... I mean, if it makes it through a year, that'd be good.
Well, right? Exactly, yeah. Then they can just get another one next year.
Exactly.
That's fine. That's a perfect t-shirt, fruit of loom industry for somebody out there. But yeah, so you were just saying that, you find it quite difficult to quell the neighbours' smooth radio.
It's just... I would mind less if it was more offensive. It's just so bland and so inoffensive.
Just have more about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair.
It's like someone...
Lift music in the background.
Yeah, it's like someone trying to, spoon warm mashed potato in my ears. Not lumpy mash, like really creamy mash. It's just mush in my head.
What if we sound... Sally did compliment you on how relaxing your voice was.
What
if your voice
that's what I sound
is
like?
Smooth mashed potato being poured into people's ears?
Well, I would go with syrupy. I would like syrupy, please. But, when it comes to music in the back garden or through the wall or whatever, just play something half decent. I don't think it's much to ask. Or when you're out and about, wandering around, or walking, as some people might do, rather than just wandering around.
No, there's definitely a wander going.
But, whenever anybody drives past, it's never anything involving guitars that's blasting out, is it?
Yeah, that's true. Although, to be fair, I am currently listening to World War II audiobook by Anthony Beather.
I thought it was just World War II.
Yeah, well, effectively is. It's a 33-hour or something like that audiobook read by a chap called Sean Barrett, and he's very I wouldn't say it's posh English, but it's very prim and proper, it's very clear, but the sound on the audiobook is quite quiet, and so I have to turn it up quite loudly. And I was sat in a traffic jam on the way home today, in a dual lane, sort of going into a single lane, but I was there for a couple of minutes, and obviously quite hot at the moment in the UK, windows down, so when people,
military history.
Yeah, when people are sitting and probably not imagining that they would listen to something, like you say, something different, across the way, when they're hearing about the Holocaust and the Shoah, I felt a bit, I did click on and kind of, did turn it down a little bit
self-conscious.
But then did that implicate me in something? I'm I felt a bit guilty, and I was like, so it all got a bit weird. I just turned it off.
Yeah,
so
fair enough.
Anyway, but yeah, so there are things that people kind of listen to that you feel a bit like, oh, this probably isn't what. Weirdly, this isn't for other people's ears. That is in the
fair.
Yeah, smooth radio and World War II basically probably is keep to yourself, guys.
So, I guess two things off the back of that. A, it could be worse in my case. B, talking of harrowing, gut-wrenching narratives, I threatened to talk about Grim Fandango and Virtue's Last Reward last week, and I didn't.
Yeah. Is the narrative that you threatened to do it and people were waiting on tenterhooks?
No.
Tender? It's tender. It must be tender.
Tenter.
Yeah, tender for tendering meat. But I say tenter.
Yeah.
Because...
Where have I got that from?
I'm an idiot.
No one's ever corrected me.
It must be tender hooks.
That's right.
Yeah, it's got to be tender hooks.
Google will know, but we're talking into the thing that we could Google with, so we'll find out later.
That would confuse it, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, it would confuse me, but that's not hard.
Where were we? Grim Fandango and Virtue's Last Reward.
Yeah. So this is the sort of pickup from last time. Hakers pointed out after we'd finished recording that stuff like Grim Fandango and Virtue's Last Reward which are, puzzle games, narrative driven, blah, 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 seem a little bit far removed from my kind of normal gaming diet at the moment, if you like. And he's right. But circa, 2012, 2013? I was a few years out of university, media student, very, narrative in games was kind of my bag, which is why I got drawn to these. Grim Fandango, like I kind of touched upon last week, the setting and the story is what gets me through it, right? It's kind of film noir meets Day of the Dead kind of vibe. Not going to go into plot details, A, because spoilers, B, because I can't remember.
Yeah,
I think that's valid, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not a problem.
But you've got a few different ways of controlling it, and that's kind of the main reason that I wanted to actually pick up on a point that I completely neglected to mention last week, and that is for point-and-click games, particularly this one, the Vita, wait for it, had a good use of touchscreen.
Yay!
It happened. It finally happened.
Had to happen.
Yeah, so
Law of averages.
You can use the buttons to control your character and go and interact with the world and all that kind of stuff. Or you can just prod the screen and it will act more like a proper point and click.
Okay.
In almost a very literal sense. But you don't have to switch anything. There's no, it's not like you have to go into a menu and switch control schemes or anything like that. It is literally I can't see where I am on the screen. If I just press it, then my character will walk there and I can at least see where he is.
Yes.
And stuff like that. That actually makes it a lot easier to get into and navigate your way around. So, big points for me there. It's also quite funny. Actually genuinely amusing in places. So, easy 8 out of 10 for me.
Yeah.
And I will update the spreadsheet in due course.
That's super quick.
Oh,
you're right.
I am not messing around.
That was 14. That was episode 14.5 straight away. That was 14.23 or something like that.
Oh, all right. In that case, Virtue's Last Reward to bring it up to
Rich, stop rushing through
14.5.
I'm not prepared for this, the speed of this podcast. I'm freaking out.
I did, 151 word reviews the other week. You surely saw this coming.
That's fair. Yeah, darling of tools. I've done my bit now.
So Virtue's Last Reward is much more instead of controlling a character to move around, you are reading stuff. And that is why I can kind of see it being quite divisive. So between these sort of reading sections, you will occasionally have these segments where your character has to, like I mentioned last week, escape from a room. Basically in the form of an inventory / point and click puzzle, and you just solve it, right?
Yeah.
You can get extra information about why you're in this place, and it's kind of like somewhere between Saw and an anime, I think is probably about as close as I could get it in a concise way. So, you're with a group of strangers brought together in this place, you're trying to get out, none of you really knows why you're there, and people start getting bumped off and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
What is really stand out for me personally is the fact that you will follow a narrative and, you get these binary choices, sometimes literally down to a vote kind of thing.
Oh, right, okay.
And you follow your choices, you get to the end, and then for argument's sake, you might get stuck somewhere or something might happen to your character and then it'll kind of end the story and then you start again. Right. And then you start playing it through. So obviously you start picking different choices. And then before long, you can kind of see this narrative map and you can see that it's branching. And eventually you get to the stage that you start moving between these narrative choices and your character starts to remember that the other ones happened. And that's where it gets really interesting.
That's so cool. I love that.
You end up having to I'm really jumping around spoilers here.
No,
you end up having to make use of that fact in quite creative ways to progress the fuller narrative and all of these kind of disparate kind of branches and threads. It's one of those games that part of me wants to give it an 8, part of me knows that plenty of people would play it and give it 4 or less.
Oh really? Do you think so?
Because it's
sounds great.
Arguably it's not playing a game, right? It's it's a lot of reading, which if you're into that or you're open to the idea of it, then I think if you enjoy your kind of sci-fi and your insane anime tropes, you will probably get something out of it. I could easily see it not being for everybody.
Yeah.
But that said, I don't play many of these sorts of games, but this one really got its hooks in me. And I think I've played it like 3 times or something like that. And it's rare for me to play a game of a sizable length.
How long do you think it is for something that's just like quite text-based?
I think I had one save file at one point that was 20 odd hours.
Really? Wow.
I think.
I guess if you are going to remap it a few times and stuff, yeah.
That's it. And you're retreading old ground, or dare I say, even just fully replaying bits so that you can get like different answers to the same problem. Again, he says trying to avoid spoilers. So it is very clever with how these things are put together. So easy 7 recommendation from me.
Yeah. I remember playing a mobile game probably about 5 years ago now of a very similar ilk, where but there was a lot less text and it was about 3 hours long, and it was similar thing. I think you were lost in space or something, and it's just yes no's kind of binary questions, and you kind of go down different paths, and then like you say, you die, so you had to retread, and it would remember just like that. And little things like that make you feel like a game's really intuitive. You're like, the game knows what I'm doing because it's learning, and it's just like, but actually, like, it's not probably that clever anymore. But like for a period of time, you're like, this game remembers things. Like the Psycho Mantis thing on Metal Gear Solid that everyone goes on about it, and it's like, oh, it knows what's on my memory card. And it's like, of course, the computer that I'm playing on knows what's on my fucking save file. That is
put it there.
How stupid! But it's just like, oh wow!
And it kind of links back to some of what Hakers was saying last week about text adventures and things like that. Like there are certain things that you can do with those forms and those ways of playing games. Like I think it was some of the more recent ones, like Doki Doki Literature Club and stuff like that, do some really meta, like creepy things. He says, I haven't played it, but I've heard stories,
I've heard stories. I've heard some shit, man.
But yeah, like there is some really interesting stuff going on with like the kind of text-based game nowadays, particularly the adventure type ones that are going to throw you for a bit of a loop and keep you guessing and stuff like that. So yeah,
it also feels like a bit amazing that they all seem to have the same sort of setting where it's like there's a serial killer and you have to find out who it is, like Among Us, and it's just like who's like the imposter and stuff, and it's like they all seem to be set in space, or there's a monster or a sci-fi
there's always
feel.
Something to it, isn't there?
And I mean, I say I'm just painting it with a broad brush there, but it's certainly the ones that seem to get the most exposure on a popular level tend to kind of go along with that vibe.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And certainly the ones that I've played, he says, looking vaguely at Hatterful Boyfriend and stuff like that, like there's definitely sci-fi vibes. So yeah, I think that's probably about right. But I would happily assume that if you went trudging through Steam, Hakers, fire up the Steam Deck, get on there, find us a sort of swords and sorcery text adventure with weird meta insane shit, please.
just put that in there. Just play Rich saying that to it and see what happens.
So yeah, like would recommend. I know nobody's ever really going to play it, but I'm pretty sure it got a re-release somewhere or another. I'm feeling it might be on Switch or something.
Well, we've discussed this, and we'll probably discuss it further in this episode about re-releases and remasters. It feels like everything we discuss is like, oh, it got a re-release.
Old hat but new hat.
Yeah. I had one more point on that, and it was completely gone from my mind. That's really annoying. I was like nursing it for ages, and now it's like,
oh, I'm sorry.
I hate when that happens, where you're like, whilst I was listening to you talk, I was like, just, you keep sort of bubbling on the surface.
Remember that one.
Like,
just remember that one. Just remember that one.
And then you kind of get to the end of the conversation and you relax just enough to go, bye-bye. And you're like, fuck. Thank you, brain, you shit house.
Thank you for listening to episode 14.5. This is episode 15
Hooray!
of the Live in La Vita Loca podcast.
Welcome, My name is Fazz.
I'm Rich. What are we drinking, Fazz?
We are drinking... it's very basic in its design, which I think is a bit of a flaw nowadays on any sort of IPA. It feels like almost a bit of a stipulation that you're meant to have something that makes it stand out. This looks like they've tried to make it the most bog standard supermarket version of an IPA. It's like, here's 3 colours with some wavy lines, and we'll call it hazy pale. And it's like, yeah, but it is just brewed for a supermarket, and it's a 4 pure, but it's quite nice actually. So I'm not like going to kick it out of bed. Another little Father's Day gift from the boys.
Yeah.
Through Sally's bank account, but I think Oscar did pick these out, so that would probably explain a little bit of the,
the bright colour thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's a colour, and so
he's done well.
He'll like it.
The sort of big sort of purple and black vibes going on there. That's
Wait
quite
till you
classy.
drink it. Wait till you drink it.
Yeah.
What are we talking about in this episode, then, Rich?
What are we talking about? I mean, besides beer.
Well, I mean, so riffing. Maybe we should call it 14.75 because
too complicated.
I'm dipping back in on the puzzle world, but it's a different puzzle world. It is a block puzzle, and I picked this week just to kind of riff on the puzzling situation, but to also, we'll probably talk about it a little bit at the end because I want to, is what makes up a puzzle game, because we talked about a lot last week about point and click adventures, and obviously we've spoken about more of those kind of things in puzzle games, but actually I had a different idea of what a puzzle is or was, and that point's just come back to my head mid-flow, and I'm really annoyed about it now. Yeah, no rewinds. I'm going to leave it. The point's gone now. It's fucking pointless. But yeah, so I just want to kind of get a feel for what you think about what actually constitutes a puzzle game. But this game that I'm supposed to talk about is Lumines. So, Lumines? Fuck, is it Lumines?
I don't know.
Oh, shit.
I was asking you.
I think it might be now. Now you've said that. Lumines. Lumines. It definitely would make sense.
Lumines. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yes.
How many ways can you say this word?
Sex, kex, computer exchange.
Lumines.
I'm gonna have to say Lumines because that's what I've always called it, but that's definitely wrong now that you suggested there are other versions.
Quite close to Lemmings.
I mean, I will talk about Lemmings right now because I fucking love Lemmings.
Also a puzzle game?
Yeah, it definitely is. Well, it is actually. Yeah, we'll talk about that. Great, this is going really well.
Excellent.
How excited are we to just be here? Very.
I mean, I live here, so I'm always excited.
Nobody gave us this platform. So Lumines is a block puzzle game. Have you played it?
Funnily enough, I picked it up on the Switch store on your recommendation.
Okay, you can talk to me about that in a second. So, but it came out for the PSP 2005, so it was a launch game era situation, and it is a 2x2 block puzzle. So basically, you get a square made up of 4 smaller squares, and that could be made up of, say, if you've got the colour orange and silver, you'd have maybe 2 orange and 2 silver, vertically together. Maybe you'd have them across the square in a checked pattern, or you might have 1 silver, 3 orange, and you drop that gets dropped down onto a grid just like Tetris. But then you don't want to fill up the grid because that's when the level finishes. Mm-hmm. You have on the main mode, it is a challenge mode, and you are trying to get to a level 100, and basically to go up levels you need to score points. The way that you score points is by making 2x2 blocks, so a square of 4 of the same colour.
Right.
So you may make them 4 silver or 4 orange. You can join blocks together, so you might land 8 together, or you might land 6 together. If you land a lot together at the same time, this will improve your score, and you're trying to improve your score to go up levels. Whilst this is going on, you also have a timeline sweeping across your grid, and the timeline, basically, every time the timeline passes, that's when your score gets added up. So when it passes the blocks that have been created into solid colour blocks, that then gets added to your score. And you kind of want to time it really where you kind of get the most blocks together. So there is a bit of tactical nous about when you hit the timeline as well. The timeline, it's actually rhythm based. So it's actually where the song that's playing, I should say that actually. So it's a rhythmy kind of game. So is it called a rhythm puzzle fusion? I think it is, or
something like that.
Yeah, it's called a fusion game, and the idea is that actually there's really cool vibey music playing in the background, usually sort of techno pop or something, and you've got lots of colours going off in the background as well. And the whole idea is then that you kind of play this game sort of to the rhythm, although it's got nothing to do with it almost in a way, apart from the timeline changes its pace with the rhythm of the game, which you don't realise probably until you play it for long enough. But thoroughly addictive. Like you could just sit on this game,
just zone out.
And so I picked this up and I thought, I saw the glowing reviews back from 2005 of the first game. There was a sequel in 2008, I believe it was. And lo and behold, as you say, there's been a remaster on the PlayStation. You can get it on the Xbox and you can get it on the Switch. So I remember the reviews of this game being really, really good, like almost like always top 5 PSP game. And I was like, I'm not really a massive natural Tetris fan per se, or a puzzle sort of kind of guy. Like I kind of get a bit turned off by like crosswords and stuff, like as in things that like are cleverer than me. They're better than me.
Pieces of paper with black and white print.
Pulped paper as well. Not only that, like really shitty brown paper. And it's better than me. So, but yeah, I feel defeated. I don't kind of get that real satisfaction, and don't get that, I'm going to come back for more and I'm going to be better next time. I kind of just go, no, fuck you. Like, well done, you beat me. Great. See you next year. Take a quiz or whatever it's called, or take a break. But got a real violent streak in me when it comes to doing crosswords, it seems.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, this kind of feel of game isn't natural to me, and I was just kind of picking up to think, it can't be that good. It can't be as good as people say it was. It can't be the quintessential PSP game or a sequel. And I was really pleasantly surprised, to be honest, and I thought this game was actually a lot better than I thought it was going to be. I don't know if it was naturally sort of like a really high-scoring game that I'm like, oh, it's the best game on the PSP, and that might just be, like I say, though, how I feel about these types of games. But it certainly is addictive, and once you start playing more and more, like the more you think, I am progressing at this, I am getting better at this, I want to go up the levels. Because what happens is when you go up your levels at a certain time, for example, it's like level 8, you go to the second song or the second skin, and then the level changes, and that kind of freaks you out a little bit because you're in a rhythm and you're listening to this song, and all of a sudden different colours come up.
You have to readjust.
Yeah, a different song comes up, and you're halfway through trying to stop this grid from getting too full by making blocks, and all of a sudden, like, the colours have changed on it. And if you're colourblind, oh my word! Like, my dad's colourblind. And I was asking him what colour traffic light was the other day, and I was like, white. And I was like, for a green light, and I was like, that's crazy. Wow. Like, as in, you trying to play this game would be just impossible. Like, as in, it is not accessible at all. But so. And then you go up, and then, so I think I've got to, like, after a few hours of playing the first game, I think after 2 hours, I got to, like, the 5th skin, which is, like, level 18. And considering there's 100 levels, and you've got to keep this grid clear pretty much to try and get yourself through that, the difficulty is massive. Like, it's not an easy game at all. And the first few, like, say 30 minutes, it takes you to get past the first skin. And then in your head, because almost even, this is what makes it a retro console, if you ask me, games are easier nowadays. I bet you would probably go, you probably can save it and, come back to it or whatever, or let you go into that level again or something. No, you've got to start from level 0 every single time in the challenge mode and go up to level 100. And I'm like, wow, that's going to be tough. Like, I'm just not going to ever get there. Like, this is going to be one of those crosswords that I put down, but at least I'm kind of enjoying, and I see that I'm getting better at every single time. I'm not just stuck on a word, for example.
The arcade mentality.
Yeah,
finally,
exactly.
we got there.
Yeah, and this is it. But yeah, so the first game, and there's also other modes as well where they kind of sense that probably that it's like, we need something more than just coming back to
like
that
a
one
palette cleanser.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there is you can choose a skin mode. So once you've earned your skins, because you save them once you've earned them, then you can actually start to make your own playlist of your favourite skins. Now that's all well and good if you get some skins, but you can at least choose, like, if you like song 5 and you get really sick of song 1, Parappa the Rapper, then you might want to go, all right, well, actually I'll play on song 5 first, and and I'll just see how well I can do on that, and actually it might give you a little bit of training towards the rhythm and things and how you feel about that. There's also like a pattern mode as well where you make shapes out of your blocks, which is a lot more difficult than you think it would be. So it might be like, start off like, make a simple cross, like, and you go, I can make a cross. Then you go, actually, depends what blocks you're throwing me, what colours they are, and then your brain's trying to formulate the way to make those blocks tessellate, and it's tough. But again, it's a different mode, and it just kind of gives you something different, and that could be a completely different gamer that would really enjoy that mode. So you kind of get like this start to get this feel where you get 2 games, 3 games in one game, and I really appreciated that there was a lot of different things there. And actually, whilst and that made me, the pattern mode made me enjoy the challenge mode more, because I was like, actually, whilst I found this hard, the rhythm songs, not the time attack mode, that's not my thing. This isn't my jam. So actually, I don't mind the difficulty, because actually I've been guided towards it by other modes. But yeah, it's really cool how many different types of game there are in this one game.
Yeah, good sort of variations on a theme.
Yes. So that's Lumines. Lumines, or Lumines. Lumines 2. Lumines 2. Even more progressive as a game. 60 skins. Or some of the songs, there's some licensed songs on there, and they've got actual music videos in the background.
That's got to be distracting.
It's fucking difficult. Fatboy Slim playing in the background. You're like, what am I watching here? I'm trying to watch my blocks. I don't understand. But again, just it becomes way more in depth, and they kind of simplified almost the menus and the types of modes and things, and it became much more of a fluid sort of just playing experience. Really, that is but they kind of keep the same shtick, so it's still like you've got your challenge modes, you've got your time attack modes. There's a couple of modes. I forgot about this mode completely. It's all the games. Versus CPU, so you can play against the computer.
Okay.
And you get half a field each. And when you start making your blocks to get your score, then it will move the middle of the screen towards the CPU side and vice versa. So it becomes, if you start losing quickly, then you lose quickly.
Yeah, kind of like a sort of turf war type thing.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's so much fun. Again, a different type of game within this game. And that's got like 10 skins, for example. And then this one, I think it's got 17 in the second game. You could actually play online as well at the time. Again, there's nobody doing that anymore on the PSP, but you could do that. So obviously that would be you against somebody else. Like, there was so much variety in this game, and it's such a good predecessor to Tetris Effect. Have you played Tetris Effect?
I haven't, no.
So I've only owned it. Well, I've got it on the Xbox, but I haven't played the Xbox. But I've only owned it and bought it on the Oculus Quest 2.
Of course, yeah.
And that was always a really review game there. And it was like, and that is a cool, arresting sort of experience where you've got the rhythm of the songs going on and the different sort of colours of the Tetris blocks, and just the whole environment. You can see that it's completely rooted in this game.
Yeah, it's like kind of sensory experience as much as it is a game, right?
Very much so. But I'm going to be honest, it does feel like it steals from Lumines. Like, it does feel like, actually, even though it came, I think, about 5 or 6 years later than Lumines 2, like, everyone says Tetris Effect is amazing. And then you kind of get the competitive Tetris Effect, which, again, is the same sort of concept of Lumines in terms of having versus people versus a CPU. But yeah, Lumines 2, like, I would say that actually probably is a better game than Tetris Effect, even though that's probably more lauded. And I don't know whether or not that's just because it was on the PSP comparative to, whereas Tetris Effect seems to have been across lots of different consoles when they released it. So yeah, we'll come to an average score soon about all this, but I do want to get to Lumines Remastered.
Yeah.
The reason I want to get to that is because it's the first time where I've played 1, I've played 2, and now I want to play the remastered version because I want to see what it's like. That is, I genuinely want to pay some money here just to play the same game, but actually I need it, I'm not going to just go and see, like, for example, Resident Evil 2, I was like, I just want to see what it looks like and things. But I never really stuck around for it because, as I've referred to previously in the pod, because I really like Resident Evil 1, Resident Evil 2, original, sorry, even. But, like, with this, I was like, I thought I'll read a review about what Remastered looks like. And it was all like, come and check this out. This is Lumines. And it was almost like, a lot of reviews were almost like, if you've never played it before. But obviously I'd played it really recently.
Yeah.
But my word, what a great game. What a fucking awesome game. Like, as in, like, it's just £4, 4 pence on the Switch, on Nintendo eShop. please go and buy this game. Like, as in, while it's on offer. Like, I could not recommend this game enough. Like, it just, because the progression you see from Lumines 1 to Lumines 2 to this, even just the landing menus are all just simplified, and they've just made everything so user-friendly. But it's definitely a handheld game, if we're going to be honest. Like, that's the only thing I'd go out and bat to say is that I wouldn't really necessarily play this on. I wouldn't play it on the Xbox. I wouldn't play it on the PlayStation because I don't think you need to play it on a big screen. Like, as in, I think you almost get a better feel, and also with the Switch, you get a rumble effect as well. So with the controllers, and to the point where they made it that you could actually attach 8 Joy-Cons to it. And so that you can put them all over your body to feel the rhythm of the game, which is so weird. I mean, I
didn't know that bit.
Yeah, it's pretty fucky. But yeah, that is in. Yeah, and it's got all the challenges you need, and the graphics make it better, and it's so colourful and vibrant. And I couldn't believe I picked this game up for £4, and it's been fantastic for me over this week to be able to. Probably I've played it for all the games together for maybe about 8 to 10 hours. And it's just the same concept. But I've seen a progression in how much better the game has gotten over the years, and I really appreciate that they remastered this game, and it's not just they remastered it and, tweak this or tweak that, like, to make it so much better. It's pretty much still the same core game, but you can just tell that they kind of made it a bit more user-friendly, and and it's got better graphics, so it makes it a bit easier to see when you are using it handheld. And that they've made it like, well, actually it's 60. They've brought in 60 skins on this one rather than the 115 skins they've built up to over the first 2 games. They've picked the best skins, for example, and the best songs and stuff. So you kind of get rid of a lot of the chaff that they must have sort of thought, well, that's not great, that doesn't work. Yeah, wow. I'm really happy that I made the decision to kind of go, do you know what? I'm going to pay the £4, a measly £4. That is in less than what a pint costs in the UK right now, just to check out and see whether this game is worth and has progressed. Almost, I'm going to be honest, almost a little bit of a let's see what it's like for the pod situation.
Yeah.
But for a personal thing for me now, I have a really great game on my Switch that's a handheld that I kind of go, actually, like, you can see how that's now just outdated the PSP. For example, that is I don't need to go back to Lumines 1 or Lumines 2, really, because Lumines Remastered has everything that I need from it. And whilst I'm saying all this and glowing about it and stuff, it's still not the perfect game for me, because it's still probably not my game type, really. Like, sure. But there is an addiction there. And when I said Lumines 2 is better than Tetris Effect, Lumines Remastered is miles better than Tetris Effect. Like, yeah, absolutely. Interesting. Yeah, I think it is very much so. And it makes me feel a bit like justified to say, well, actually, it feels like it's like, I feel like Tetris really borrowed from the original Lumines. So actually, I feel like I should have the love for seeing the series through, almost, in a way.
That makes sense.
Do you know what I mean? And it's not like it's not like I've got anything against Tetris. I mean, everyone loves the original Tetris. Do you know what I mean? Like, don't think there's anybody that doesn't. And then a lot of the evolutions of it, and like I say, the Tetris Effect is so well reviewed, and it was fun. But definitely Lumines Remastered for £4. Like, if you can, like, definitely pick it up. It's great. Its score, average score. You're going to be like, oh, well, it's so glowing and blah blah. But actually, I'd say, go on.
Sorry, I have
just ranted on there.
But it seems to me like, because a couple of times when, and the one that I keep coming back to is Civilization. And where admittedly Civilization 6 compared to the one that I reviewed on the Vita wasn't like a remake or a remaster, but it did supersede it enough to impact the scores. So did the remastered version of whatever the hell we're calling this game, did that do enough to kind of impact your scores at all?
That's interesting, because I think that it has moved the series forward in so much that it's like it's probably easier to play. And I think that the way the reviews kind of jump into it and stuff, the ones that I've read, like, as in, I can understand where they come from. If you've never played Lumines before, because it does feel a bit like, almost like here's a brand new experience. People, there's not that many people who've played PSP Lumines or whatever, or remember it and stuff. And so, yeah, I kind of get where it's like, it's kind of a new experience. Like you said, if I'd never played the originals, then actually maybe I'd be a bit like, oh, this is a really, really great game and it's a brand new sort of experience for me. Because I've played, like, Lumines 2 really feels like probably the quintessential, actually, right. I think, in a way. But playing that game on the PSP is harder than it is playing it on the Switch now.
Sure, yeah.
Like, as in, so, and it's obviously a small screen, so I'd recommend taking the jump up to the Switch and say, play the remastered version on the Switch, just for that. Really, you get the rumble effect, and also it's a bigger screen and better graphics.
Makes sense.
So, but yeah, I'm gonna say an 8. Now that sounds like
I'm going to write these down. They're going in the spreadsheet.
Your eyebrow dropped there. I saw it because I was just like,
eyebrow.
But then I guess that's just because, like I say, that's just from me, and that is, we talk about these scores every week and stuff. That's an opinion. That's a feel from me where, I've really enjoyed it and I've loved it, but it's not necessarily my type of game all the time.
Yeah.
If you love this kind of stuff where you can just sit and while away the hours, and you think, I don't mind being addicted to a game and playing the same sort of concept over and over with different rhythms and things. That you love Tetris, for example.
Yeah.
I bet you'd absolutely fucking love this game. Yeah, and so yeah, please, if you've got £4 spare, donate it to the Lumines, Lumines cause on your Switch.
Is that the same score for the sequel as well?
Yeah, I think I'm going to give it just a broad 8. That is, maybe Lumines, the original, a 7, and then I'd say 2 and the remaster, I'd go an 8. Yeah, that's where I'm landing on that. So I feel pretty happy with that, to be honest.
Feeling confident about it.
Yeah. So yeah, that brings me on to the point then. So block puzzling games and things like that. So I always think as a puzzle is, I guess, something to be solved.
Yep.
Pretty much, isn't it?
Yeah. Basically.
Yeah, no, that's probably the definition
of
of
what I'm not really going to argue with that one.
So, so making, whatever a puzzle game is, so then if you're solving something, you are playing a puzzle game by design. But then, like, for example, like Beehive Bedlam on Sky, like where you're shooting your little, what is it, little bubbles, are they, into your hive or something like that? Like
flowers?
Yeah, flowers. Well, if you get 3 flowers in a row, that used to blow the whole shit up. That was pretty cool, wasn't it? And I've just found out that it's still available on Sky as well. So yeah, I found out from my parents' house. I saw it advertised on my parents' Sky. I was like, whoa, that's insane. So I'd love to get back on it, to be honest. But yeah, I guess that it's a puzzle game, like in a way, like as in, I'm not trying to sort of say there's a certain type of game and stuff, but there's a massive difference between a block puzzle game and a point and click adventure puzzle game for me.
Yeah.
What's your favourite type if you got given a chance? What is
my favourite type?
Tell me, you picked up Lumines. Have you played it much, or just?
I've played it a little bit. I've not played it a heck of a lot for 2 reasons. The first reason is I picked up a game for the Mega Drive that I've had my eye on for a while, so I've been playing that instead.
Are you going to talk about it?
No. Well, yeah, all right. Raiden. So the Mega Drive version of that, and it was £50 for just the cartridge. And
wow.
I need to be more accountable for what I'm spending on these things. I really do, but that's a story for another time.
Well, I don't think it is. I think that we should talk about purchase accountability on this, just after you talked about a little bit about puzzle games and stuff.
We'll touch
a
on
little
that.
bit. Because that's a bold move.
It is, yeah.
Is Fiona going to find out about this on the pod?
Fiona already knows. We've had words.
Kind, loving words.
Eventually.
I respect what you do.
Something like that. I've always been a fan of Tetris. And I feel as though the original Tetris is still the best. It kind of emerged fully formed as far as I'm concerned, and then the rest of it has just been tinkering around the edges. I played quite a lot of columns on the Mega Drive back in the day, to the extent that the tune from whichever one was on Mega Games 2, whichever version of columns was on that, is now seared into my consciousness.
Is that your karaoke go-to?
I mean, it has no words.
Yeah, no. He's doing it, yeah!
puzzle games involving stuff falling down is a bit of a go-to. Because like another favourite back in the day was Wetrix.
Oh, right, okay.
He says,
I
question mark.
No, that's right. I know nothing about it, but I know I know it exists.
Yeah. So, oh god, how do I explain this? So you basically have a board, and then various bits of land fall into it, and it either raises it or lowers it, or does other effects. And the idea is that you just stop water flowing out the sides of your board when it starts falling from the sky.
Okay.
So it's again kind of like a variation on a theme. Back in the day, my sister had like Puzzle Bobble on the PlayStation, or Bubble Bobble, and which is kind of a similar sort of matching certain things but going upwards instead.
Is that the stuff? I mean, like, sorry, I don't want to cut you off.
No, I was just going to say it's basically like it feels as though when you start talking about quote unquote puzzle games, stuff's either falling up or falling down.
Yeah,
like
pretty much.
That's generally it. Because otherwise you're into like, I don't know, board game territory or something like that.
Well, I was just about to mention that. I know Bairdy mentioned on a previous pod, who came to Slam Dunk with us and talked about Cooler World, for example, PlayStation 1, where you are a beach ball rolling around and you've not got to fall off and you've got to get over obstacles. And then that made me think, we both really like Super Monkey Ball, don't we? And that is that a puzzle game? I guess it is, because you're solving something.
Sort of, but it's kind of
a platformy.
Is it a bit more of a racing game? Weirdly.
Well, because you're racing against clock, and then that made me think about Mercury. Obviously, again from episode 2, where that's kind of a puzzle game where you end up with lots of different things you've got to do in there and balancing, but also working out different colours. And now I want to play Mercury again.
And then you end up with, I don't know, like you go back to some of the old pool games back in the day. We have like a trick shot mode, which are basically puzzles, or
Archie McLean, who did Mercury, did pool. Famous. That was like one of his things that Jimmy White's cue ball, or whatever you call it. I think it was. So.
Well, there's even some of the. I can't remember if it was on like Advanced Wars or something similar, but like quite a few of those sort of tactical, like RPG type games will quite often have a puzzle mode of some description as well, or so I think it's not quite as much of a broad catch-all as say action adventure is as a sort of genre tag, but I think there's a lot of give in it as a term. I think it's quite a big, fluffy, amorphous blob of a term. But for me, the quintessential one will always be Tetris, and that is, the one that will always come to mind.
Did you have an original Game Boy with it on there, or?
I had a Game Boy Pocket, and then later ended up picking up the original version a couple of times. For various different reasons. And then more recently I've got was it Puyo Puyo Tetris?
Yes.
On Switch.
Yeah.
Which I enjoy. And I picked up Lumines. Lumines.
Lumens.
Aren't lumens the thing the way they measure light bulbs? So I picked it up, and I've not played it a heck of a lot. But I do get the appeal. Personally, I wasn't as sold on like the vibration of the controllers and stuff like that. I found that really distracting. And it's not because of the fact that it does it or does it to the rhythm. It's the fact that because it's the Switch, it does it so strongly. I felt I was going to get RSI or something like that.
The Joy-Cons are coming off.
Well, I mean, especially if you're playing it for like 100 tracks or whatever, like your hands will be like wobbling afterwards.
I mean, I'm still only at like level 21 on it, and I can't believe there's I'm a fifth of the way through the game. How do you not fill up the grid? I don't understand that. Is it? But then I guess conquering Everest, the conquering.
Because the two are very similar.
Yeah, it wasn't done in a day. You got to reach the South Col and all that kind of jazz, and you got to get to level 25 on this. Easy.
I understand what you were getting at about the puzzle mode as well, which it seems ridiculous, seeing as we're calling it a puzzle game and it's got a puzzle mode.
Puzzle mode, yeah.
But what got me about that, and I only tried it once. and it was the very first one. You know, we have to make that cross you were saying about.
Yeah.
And in the background, they have that giant version of the cross that you have to make projected.
Yeah.
Presumably so you don't forget what you're meant to make.
Definitely helps.
I think I missed part of the brief or ignored what was going on, because instead of just making it out of like, what, five of the miniature squares, I was trying to make it fill the whole thing. And I was like, how do I get the blocks of 4 to stay like stuck halfway suspended above everything?
You weren't the only one.
That genuinely makes me feel a bit better.
Came across that problem to start off with. And then you might be the only one that Googled it or YouTube videoed it, maybe. Of which I found 3 videos telling me how to do that. So, you know, which is a low amount of videos for YouTube and tutorials. Yeah. So, yeah, you can definitely feel better about that one.
Yeah, no, I really do. Yeah, thank you. Yes.
What you cannot feel better about is paying £50 for a Sega game with no box or manual.
Right.
Can you?
I think I can.
Okay.
Right. And I'll tell you for why. Because if you buy it with the box and the manual, it's getting up to about 150 quid. Mm-hmm. No. If you...
But what? So what? How is that you... What makes... What? Wait, have you seen Taskmaster with Darrow Breed? It's just like basically like when he reads a task out, he goes, wait, what? What? Wait, what? He just doesn't understand. He does that for ages. It's just like, it's probably the best part of Taskmaster of like 15 series. Wait, what? What is your limit on...
What is my limit?
A retro Mega Drive game? Just work.
I feel like I should have said my answer first.
Yeah, ding.
Then had that. I have bought one for £100 before now.
Okay.
And again, like it was one of those ones that if you're on eBay, potentially it could go for hundreds.
Yep.
And it's some of them are getting to be crazy money. And the reason I picked up this one was because it's the only one I've seen that's cartridge only. A lot of them will have the case, but they won't have the manual, but they'll still sell it for about 100 quid.
Yeah.
That to me seems ridiculous.
That's such a halfway house, isn't it?
Yeah, I would rather have like neither the box nor the manual and save the space and some money.
That's true.
Than sort of shelling out for that extra bit. Now, I really like the arcade game, right? Mm-hmm. And I've never played the Mega Drive version. I've got quite a few shooters on it. It's definitely something I know I enjoy. So I thought, like, I've been keeping an eye out for quite a while now for this to pop up. And yeah, it was the first one that was actually in a price range that was marginally more palatable.
Yeah.
And that was the one that I paid 100 quid for. It was a similar story. Because again, like that was one that only came out in America and Japan. It's hard to find in Europe. It's hard to find at a decent price in Europe.
Yeah.
And they're getting to the stage now that because of the kind of reputation these things are having and the kind of costs involved in buying like a full boxed with manual complete copy, if it pops up cartridge only, I think you are well within your rights to just go, you know what, like I'm gonna grab it. Mm-hmm. And I don't regret either of those purchases at all. And like the £100 one was Musha, which I ended up having a bit of a chat with the guy who I bought it from on eBay, and it was definitely like a kind of like-minded person, and we had a bit of a chat about the game itself and all that. And I said, like, because of the amount, like this is basically crown jewels in the collection territory for me now, and I totally stand by that. Like I've no intention of shelling out that much for anything else, really. I think the closest I've got is like a Baldur's Gate collector's edition that has all sorts of stuff in, including a dice set that I use for Dungeons and Dragons on a regular basis still.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was, still not as expensive. So yeah, I it's not something I do lightly.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I do feel like the market is kind of forcing my hand a little bit. And it's like, well, I kind of don't want to just emulate it. And, without wishing to bring every one of these episodes back round to the fucking Sega Saturn, but I'm going to. Like, if you're trying to emulate it, it's not always accurate, and it's not always going to play like it should, either because of, you know, my computer or the software itself. So if there's a way that I can run it on, you know, something approaching original hardware, then yeah, I will pay that.
Yeah, that you make it sound. You just make it sound like such a sensible thing. Like, as in, you talk a good video game, and that is, you know, and you do, and if you feel like you've got the amount of money to be able to spend on that, and you feel like it's got the value to you personally, then more power to you. Like, you know, like, I mean, I was sat there agonising over I was going to pay £4.04 for Lumines, you know, remastered, because I was like, well, I've got these two on the PSP. Like, why would I, you know, like, and should I be living in that world where I'll piss away £4 on a coffee? No bother, that just goes in and out my system. You know, that's just done, and it's just like, right, well, do you remember that coffee you had the other day? No, but I remember this game that I bought for £4, and that's like, you know, that was worth it. Like,
but I mean, for you know, should I live more like, you know, spending money on these things? Like, no, just like it's one of those things that, like, it is my hobby, right? I enjoy doing it, and it's always been the way.
Yeah.
In a perfect world, I wouldn't have got rid of any of my previous consoles or games or anything like that, right? But that is with the benefit of a lot of fucking hindsight.
Yeah.
Because all the way through, I've been getting rid of what I've got to get the next thing. And there's been that kind of, like, churn. And that, for me, is not good. Like, I don't like that anymore. I don't like the thought of it. And I got to a position where, like, I could start to afford some nice things on top of what I had and build up a collection.
Yeah.
So I did, and, like, it would kind of be geared towards, like, say, birthdays and things like that. You know, treat myself to a little, you know, secondhand console and a few games for it.
Yeah.
Then a few games became a few more games, and then a few more games became a few more games. Then the pandemic hit, and I was like, fuck it, I've got nothing else to spend my money on. I'm going to, like, you know, build the collection properly. And then I've gone too far the other way, and I'm too fast and loose with what I'm spending money on. And I know in Retro Gamer magazine, quite often they will say about having targets or having a list of things you're aiming for and things like that. And I think that's going to be my next project, is to properly think about what I enjoy playing and what I want to collect.
Yeah.
With more focus, because I've been so scattershot. And, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not buying, you know, several 50 quid games a week or anything like that. But nonetheless, accumulatively, the spending is going to get to the stage that it will be a problem unless I'm very, very careful and start being a lot more selective.
I mean, there is a form of addiction that comes with anything, really, that you really love, and, you know, and it becomes a hobby and things, you know. I mean, and it's funny, I'll still find myself sort of hovering on eBay looking at PSP games, knowing fine well that I've got another 50 sat there that I've not touched yet, and it's like, and it's just like, well, that looks like, you know, and you just kind of keep on thinking to yourself, well, or you look on CEX and it'll be like, oh, 50p for this game. You go, 50p for a game? I'm in. You know what I mean? It's like, you don't need it. That is in, but you just sort of think, you know, like the materials alone attached to the concept of that game is worth 50 pence, surely. You know, I could probably sell, like, you know, melt it down and sell the metal or something, you know, like in a far-flung land for like £1, you know, like, it's just, you know, it just seems like such good value. And it's funny how we have, we don't have different concepts on it per se, but a lot of mine is driven by quantity for low price to kind of have to own, to maybe have a dabble with at some point. And I'm not saying yours isn't that either, but certainly you have more that isn't, you know, you're like, right, well, actually, this, I'm looking at, I mean, you talk about having targets, you already spoke about having them. Yeah. And, you know, you might even become more targeted, but, you know, you talk about having this game that's like, that's your crown jewel, and that's, you know, and there's a reason that you want that, and you have a backstory behind why you'd want that and what you feel about that. So it's, you know, horses for courses, really. Speaking of which, I mean, when I bought you that G1 jockey for PlayStation 2, definitely need to have a dabble with that at some point. Maybe that's an episode.
That could be an episode.
That feels
we'll
like
try and learn how to play G1 jockey.
Put the bit in the horse's mouth or something or other. But
yeah, you have to like whip it as it's going around corners and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and I did dabble with it.
Oh, really? Have you had a little?
I had a little go, and was legitimately awful at it. Despite my surname, I'm crap with horses. It turns out.
Rich jockey over here. But yeah, when you talk about purchasing video game stuff, then, and I use the word we use the word accountability at the start of this, and it's almost it's interesting to think that there has to be some sort of accountability to it. To anyone purchasing anything that is, I guess, what would you call it? Like an not an excess, or what, something that isn't an essential to your life.
A luxury.
Yeah, I guess it is a luxury.
It is a luxury.
Yeah. But you shouldn't. I guess what I'm trying to say to our listeners is that you shouldn't feel guilty about what you're doing if you love it and you really care about it, and actually, that you feel like it's time and money well spent.
Yeah. Then
just fucking do it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, and like I was always lucky that my parents will be listening. I'm sure they won't mind. Like, we didn't have a heck of a lot of money growing up, right? And that was partly what contributed to that over turnover of consoles and games, because you got to fund it somehow, right? But they always maintained that books, music, films, games, like anything that's got some artistic merit in some way, shape, or form is always worth the money. And that's an ethos, for better or worse, that I've carried through.
It's lovely. It's nice.
Yeah, but it is one of those things that, like, I am lucky enough to, be in a position where I can spend money on these things, but at the same time, I'm rapidly starting to learn that I fucking shouldn't all the time. So yeah, I guess I'll keep everybody updated with how I progress on this journey.
Yes, yeah, indeed, yeah. So right, well, that's it for this week on the podcast. Next week, we're going to veer away from talking such puzzly, thinky.
Yeah, I want to blow some shit up.
You want to blow some shit up, and that's fair. But I think you're going to look at shmups, and I'm kind of going to look at FPSs. For the PSP, a little bit of a versus situation, maybe, and we'll just sort of
don't ask how it works.
We haven't. Never ask how anything around this podcast works, please. And we'll see how we get on with that. So, thanks very much for listening, guys, and we'll see you next week.
Cheers.